Hey everybody, Jayborino here. I wanted to make a retrospective video on the ongoing MapCraft contest. So like a semi-post-mortem of the contest itself, but I also wanted to talk about all of the maps in retrospect, because opinions change when you look back on maps, and I want to make sure that all the creators get their due and understand that we really appreciate the fact that they submitted their content to our contest. And I am shocked, honestly, that we got as many submissions as we did. We got 19 submissions, 10 Starcraft 2, 3 Warcraft 3, and 6 Starcraft 1. And I just wanted to get viewers' feedback on how they think the contest went. And that's why, I mean, it's sort of a post-mortem for the contest, which has not technically ended. Well, then I'll also talk about the maps. So this is going to be sort of a rambly vlog-type video without the face cam, I suppose. So if that's not for you, go ahead and feel free to go and watch something else. But if you're interested, stick around and, again, talk about the contest, talk about the maps. But I really want to get an idea of how people felt about the contest. Did you know that this contest existed? I did make a video for it early on. Did you ever join the Jayborino Discord? We've got a nice little community there. I'll put a link in the description. Did you head over and check out any of Deltron Live's or Pronago's videos to see maybe if they had showcased any maps before I had, or seen how they approached any of the maps I may have struggled with? Stuff like that. And then if we were to reapproach this contest and do it again sometime next year, do you think we could utilize a theme? And keeping in mind that we don't want to exclude anybody for sort of an arbitrary theme. So we want to, the whole idea of this contest is that it's the fact that it is a contest with a really low stakes reward is that it's a facade. The contest is a facade to give folks an excuse to get involved in the community and make something and submit it and get feedback and be able to use our audiences as sort of a test bed of folks who may want to play their map or give some feedback on it. So that, again, that's kind of the main idea that I wanted to shoot for with this contest. And just to shout out to Pronago, this was his idea, and he ran it by Deltron and I, and that's how we made it a thing. So props to him for even thinking this up. And that's when we said, you know, let's keep the rewards relatively simple and just try to get as many people involved as we can, because we didn't know how many participants we got, and here we are with 19. I expected less than 10, and I'm flattered that people were willing to participate, and it's been really, really fun. So again, as viewers of the contest, how do you think we could have better advertised it? Did you even know about it when it started, or wasn't until maybe you saw our videos starting to get released for it? Again, it's really important to me that I understand how we can best engage with you folks and try to get people involved, because this is something we'd like to continue to do, whether it be once a year or more or less or what have you. Alrighty, so again, please leave your thoughts on the contest. Very important on the topics that I had just mentioned. But I also want to go down the list of maps. The order of these is just the order that I played them, separated out by game. So we could start with SC2 and the Cleanup Crew, which was submitted by Masked Imposter, the creator of Mapsters, which we're still waiting on a last mission for, I'll have you know. Masked Imposter. But I quite liked the Cleanup Crew. A lot of shout-outs to the DPS podcast and some goofy stuff from there, and Reverina. So really the tone of the map is what made it enjoyable for me, and the fact that you could just create your own curse words without really understanding what context they would be used in at the beginning. So the word skeletons is now being used as an adjective, as like a meme on the Jayborino Discord, which is pretty goofy. But again, overall, the tone of the map is what really, I think, made this one really fun and enjoyable for me. The gameplay, I think because I played on a lower difficulty, it was mostly, you know, make your bio ball in a couple tanks and move out. But again, it was ultimately fun because it was so goofy, and also the boss fight was really, really fun as well. I think I almost lost even on the normal difficulty, but the boss fight was unique, and you had two really interesting heroes, Brett and Keith, that kept things pretty fresh. So ultimately a solid submission. And then moving on to Lost in the Jungle, this one took me off guard a lot because I saw the Warcraft 3 visuals, and I thought, oh, it's Warcraft 3, this is great. I love Warcraft 3, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to see the model slightly scaled up. And then I realized, oh, the tech tree is completely different. So not only was it visually unique, but it was also technically unique, which impressed me a lot. I think the implementation of the mission itself could have been improved upon a bit, in that the bonus objectives could have been a little more distinct on the map, and then also how to complete the map. There wasn't a lot communicated. There was a human base on the bottom of the map that I didn't fully understand why it was there, and they sent a text like, should we destroy it? I guess it didn't really matter. Again, there's like not really much transparency there, but again, I was sort of smitten by the mix of Warcraft 3 visuals along with just a new tech tree that you could have, could have been implemented with any different visuals as well. So that was really fun. Really, just I think the respawning enemies is where the unneeded challenge came into play, especially because some of them you couldn't see through some of the tall grass. So that's probably the only thing that I could say, if that gets updated and either removed or changed in some fashion, is a really, really fun map. Again, very impressed with the implementation of just a brand new tech tree, and it wasn't even with typical Starcraft assets, so that was really fun. And then moving on to the final hour submitted by UED Commander. I liked this map a lot. It felt like a sandbox map. I guess one of the main parts that I felt was weird was the Duke boss just felt completely out of the ordinary compared to the other two bosses. I think Phoenix could have been changed to be more challenging in a way. I think you're not supposed to kill Duke with battle crews. You're supposed to kill him with cloaked wraiths or something. So I get that. But anyway, the positives of the map is I really like the intro micro section. I knew that I was in for something cool with the updated UED assets, and then just the way that the tech tree is implemented. It's very different, where you don't build with your miners, your gatherers. You have to build a separate unit, which then sacrifices itself to create a different building. So that changes the way you think from the get-go, and you have to kind of rethink how your money is spent. So I liked that a lot. Also, the map was challenging. So it's almost a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation, because you can unlock the whole tech tree for the player, but then the map was challenging enough that I couldn't really experiment as much as I would have liked to. Alternatively, if you scale the tech tree back but the map remains challenging, then it doesn't have the same impact, because the map was supposed to be like a giant ultimate battle with the UED versus Kerrigan and her allies. So why wouldn't the tech tree be fully unlocked? So you kind of have to balance those two things out. So I kind of viewed it as it should have been the last mission in a campaign, but we didn't have the context to understand the tech tree prior to that. So it was a little challenging to balance those, but once we figured it out, it was a lot of fun, and we got to mess around with a lot of the different units. So I like that. Again, very sandboxy. SC2 Widow. So this is a follow-up to the Time Convergence campaign by Vastin X, and I really liked Time Convergence, and I really like Vastin X's method of storytelling. And a lot of this, I think, just kind of addressing the elephant in the room is there is a language barrier there. And even through that, I still see Time Convergence as having one of the most enjoyable stories that I have experienced. And you have to do a lot of the work as the player, again, because of a language barrier, to interpret how the story is being presented to you. But I still, even through that, see it as an incredibly engaging story. So that's why when I played Widow, contextually it's great against Time Convergence, but by itself makes no sense at all. But it's also very clear that it's not supposed to make any sense, and that more would be explained later. So this group of Terrans lands on a planet, and then they're like, what's going on here? And at the end, you're saying, well, what's going on here, as the player yourself? So in a way, even as a standalone map, the idea is it's supposed to create that intrigue. And I enjoyed it. There's a lot of places to easily fail, and I think this is the same with Vastin's earlier maps as well in Time Convergence, is that you get a lot thrown at you that's very different. And I see that as a double-edged sword. It's a very, very strong suit, because I love all of the custom assets. I really like the Adriano flame tank. It's really, really fun to use, and I really like the Supplicant's assets that can blink. But again, if you blink and you miss-micro them and one goes into the chasm, and then you just instantly lose. This did not happen to me, but I've already spoken to Deltron and Pronago. We were talking throughout the whole time we were playing these, and I can see that would be a possible issue. Is just how easy it is to lose, especially when things are brand new. So honestly, maybe a difficulty selection or simply scaling back the difficulty, especially if this is meant to be early in the campaign, could be worthwhile. Though at the same time, an aspect of the original Time Convergence campaign was that it was hard. So trying to keep this separate, though, from its predecessor. I liked Widow as a map, though I was on the cusp of losing a few times. Mostly just because even if you're playing well, you're on the cusp of losing, because things can change so quickly with all the new assets. So it's almost like I wish that it was introduced at a slightly slower pace, such that the enemy attacks came at a slower, even when you were going through the cannon with the Adriano tank and the blinking supplicants, it was a little more forgiving so that it wasn't just instant loss. or maybe even just advising the player to quick save at the beginning of each section might be worthwhile. So that's hard to say. I'm not a creator, but I'm just offering critique and maybe possible solutions, but it's really about rethinking how you introduce new content to the player when it's so radically different, because it's so cool. I love all of the new things introduced, but when it's thrown at you, it's very, very hard to decide how to utilize it and then not lose within the minute that you have, especially the rock section. And I think this was some of the feedback Deltron provided to you, and you had mentioned you might include it, Vastin, is that add arrows to show what paths the enemies will take, and as you destroy the rocks, they update, so it makes it clear, like, you should destroy the rocks so that you can make them all converge. So you have to do that while also getting used to the new tech tree. Pretty challenging. Maybe even open up with the tech tree, give the player their command center and don't reveal the top part of the map until you introduce the tech tree. Then the rest of the map opens up and you have to destroy the rocks and so on and so forth. So just to kind of give the player like a brief 3 to 4 in-game minutes tutorial on your new tech tree. You have your bulldozers and then your creators and then your very basic units. And then maybe, then the rest of the map opens up and you realize, oh, I can make the jumpy stalkers too. I think that would be an interesting way to implement. Again, you don't have to do that. It's just a recommendation of mine on how you could better introduce the player. Alaric's Conquest. This was sent to us by Dave Spector, and it's actually on SC2 Mapster. So the campaign is called Alaric's Conquest. The map was called Violent Negotiations. This was short, and I believe it was meant to be a Mission 1, and I think a short Mission 1 is prime. I like my map short. A lot of the submissions for MapCraft took me close to an hour. Some of them I quit before I got to an hour because I knew they would take me over an hour to complete them, and they were just very difficult. So this was refreshing, not just because it was short, but because it felt like a Mission 1. It was a solid Mission 1 in that I love the UI, great inclusion of voice acting, and just different units. I like the idea that you could upgrade the individual votaries. That was cool too. So overall, a really solid addition. Again, I think it ended too soon, but for a Mission 1, just, absolutely fine for me. I do like... I'm going to use Replicant as an example. The missions in Replicant typically take between 20 and 40 minutes, which is... it's prime for a lot of macro maps. You include some that take very long, but I don't think every map needs to be over an hour. You can split out some of that content, and that's what I think Alaric's Conquest did very well, while also simultaneously introducing new concepts that did not feel confusing. I was able to take in the new things while still completing the map in a timely manner. So very, very well done there and fun. So a lot of potential there as well for more maps. Hope Lost was visually incredible, and I think I didn't even eventually kind of forgot you were playing Starcraft 2. It was just its own game, and you didn't even realize it was a map played through the Starcraft 2 arcade. So absolutely incredible. I can't believe Kith Raya was able to create something like that. I didn't even think it was possible. And if it is possible, I thought that there would be a huge amount of UI lag, but the UI was very crisp, and I think that was probably what impressed me the most, because in a game like this where it seemed like it's going to be expanded upon to become a major survival RPG within the StarCraft 2 arcade, is the UI with a lot of the crafting and the salvaging, is it needs to be crisp. And it is. It really is. And I talked about this a lot when I played it, but the UI specifically and the crafting and the recycling was all just, you click it, it happens. And it seems like such a simple thing, but again, I've played maps like that in the arcade where there is a bit of lag, and it was just dead on, and it worked great. Nice little intro cinematic. This is clearly a demo meant to showcase something that is more to come, but because ultimately the gameplay, there was not much of it. You smacked a few zombies with a lead pipe, you fail to get into a bunker, or you get into it if you are better at it than I, and you notice the second explosive barrel. But otherwise, there really wasn't much to do, but the visual presentation is very, 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 very pretty. It's just a very pretty looking map, and I'm just enthused by the way that something like this could be presented in StarCraft 2. So again, it's basically its own game, and it functions like its own game. It doesn't lag. There was no lag to remind me, hey, you're in the StarCraft 2 arcade. And again, that's the most impressive part. So the fact that the foundation is there for this to be able to be built into something more is incredibly exciting, and I really look forward to playing to playing more of it when something beyond the demo is released. So really, really fun. Transcendence was an interesting one. This was sent to us by Freezing Acid Rain. And I don't want to equate this too much to other entries, but it is similar to the final hour in that you start with a microsection that's very intriguing. And then it moves into a no-holds-bar macro section where your entire tech tree is unlocked. So kind of the same issues there, where the map is very challenging, and this one in particular, the objectives were not listed, so it wasn't clear to me that it was meant to be a holdout. I think if you simply add, defend against the Zerg onslaught as an objective, you don't need a timer, you don't need to over-explain to the player, but just make it clear, like, this is a holdout section, don't try to go on the offensive. It would have been so much clearer. And but kind of the same issue as the final hour, in that I almost wouldn't have preferred the entire tech tree to be unlocked. It felt more like a mod sandbox than it did a single player scenario. So I really like the introduction of the units through the initial microsection of Transcendence, and I almost wish that those units were the only ones that were available in the macro section, because you kind of get a little showcase of these little units, and then you decide, okay, well, how do I want to utilize these in a macro fashion? Obviously, the macro section couldn't be as hard as it was. You'd have to tone down the enemy attacks, and you assume this would be like a mission 2 or even a mission 1 of a campaign, or even if it was just a scenario, such that the units are incrementally introduced to you. And then I think that would define, and then you define the mission mechanics a bit more, using those paladin skills, getting the beetles, getting more of those beetles, getting more predators. When I knew that I could make carrier battle cruisers, I'm obviously just going to make those, and I'm going to ignore all the cool stuff that was already introduced to me in the micro section. So again, I think it's more about the level mechanics than it is about the data, because pretty much on a lot of these that I've already spoken about is the data editing. Basically the foundation, the technical foundation of the maps is incredible, and the amount of work that's been put into it really shows. And then it's applying that to a level design, a gameplay design that benefits it best. But overall, again, I can see huge potential with this mod. I think it could be really fun. It's like an altered melee faction. Would be really interesting. Rest in peace, Mothership was sent to me by a user named High Lord Alaric, and he stressed many, many times that this entry was just meant for feedback, and it wasn't meant to be like a real, quote, submission. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, though, this is what I wanted this contest to be about. Just submit something even if you're not fully confident in it, but you want some people to play it. Send it my way. We'll showcase it as part of the contest. And, if you don't care, you don't win, that's no problem. You're still gonna get some feedback from us, and then maybe from viewers as well. So I like this map a lot. I didn't really see any glaring problems with it. I thought it was pretty straightforward. I think my feedback in the map wrapped it up pretty well, in that I think maybe the Vanguard shot should have a reticule that you had a couple seconds to dodge, like just 2 or 3 seconds. Nothing huge, but you had a bit of time to dodge it. And then also just the bugs with the Tall Dareem coming in. And I think Kyler Alaric has already said he's updated the map, so I'd like to revisit all these maps if they've been updated since they were submitted. So that would be pretty neat. But overall, I think it was a solid submission. I think the holdout section could either be shorter or you make it more intense. Probably both. If you're gonna decrease the time between attacks, you should make the whole thing shorter in general. But yeah, there was a lot of dead air between some of the attack waves. But again, these are pretty minor things. It sounds like it may be huge criticism from Jayborino, but really I think it's a pretty minor thing. It's really just decreasing a timer in the trigger editor, and it's done. You've decreased the time in the map and the time between the attacks. I think that's absolutely fine. So overall, again, for what the creator considered a non-serious submission, I think was a competitive submission. It turned out to be great. Terran Heroics by Gastu was kind of a dark horse submission that I wasn't sure what to expect, because people were commenting on the Discord about it, and I really couldn't contextualize what it was meant to be until I played it myself. And it's very interesting. It's turn-based, and I liked it a lot. I think that it's unique in both its presentation and gameplay mechanics, and there's clear progression. It utilizes bank data, so you can keep coming back to it, so there's a lot of replayability. I think the dialogue gets a bit wordy, but at the same time, the map itself seems like it could take you dozens of hours to play, considering the amount of levels. But I like the incremental progress with unlocking new new types of units. That's very neat. I'd like to revisit it. So again, I mean, a lot of people could say if I wanted to play Fire Emblem, I would go play Fire Emblem. I agree. This is just kind of a distinct flair, though, in that you're playing it in StarCraft 2, and it's very unique on StarCraft 2. So if you like StarCraft, then you can utilize StarCraft units in an entirely different way, and it's not just like Fire Emblem or just like XCOM. It's just turn-based. So if you don't like turn-based, then of course, the map is not necessarily for you. But I do like turn-based, and I really enjoyed it. And the fact that there's so much to do in this map is really, really exciting. There's tons of replayability, and again, unique not just on the technical layer, but also the way that it's implemented in how you play the game itself. And I think because it's turn-based, it really helps, because you're able to design maps to make them feel like they're very strategic, as opposed to having to very carefully implement, like, oh, well, now an APC is going to spawn over here, and it's going to move at this speed, and you have to catch it, that kind of stuff. You're able to kind of remove yourself from those types of, I don't want to say limitations or restrictions, but it's I think, slightly easier to make a more a vaster gameplay experience with 10 levels, and each one can be an hour long, in a map like this, because again, your technical layer with the turn-based aspects really allows for that, and I like that quite a bit, and I do plan on revisiting it just so I can unlock some of the other units and try that, because in the tutorial you got to use a siege tank. I think that would be really fun, so I do plan on doing that. The Great Stewardship by Iquare was exciting, because I played a lot of Iquare's work in StarCraft 1, and they've all been very innovative and fun. So the Great Stewardship is, I think, his first map that he's made in StarCraft 2, which is incredibly impressive, because there's really, really good-looking cinematics in it, and just a lot of data editing, which I think a lot of people consider data editing and terraining to be the hardest part of the editor, the Galaxy editor. And so it's very, very impressive what he's done. I really like the intro. It could have been a little shorter, but I actually really liked it. I feel like it set the tone, and it was just different. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. It could have been its own little map. I liked it quite a bit. It's like a little arcadey holdout. It's very neat, kind of a callback to Warcraft 1, Warcraft 2, which again I think was the point. The Protoss microsection, I think, introduced a little too much too fast. The Kisrath energy regen is intriguing to me. I guess I don't fully understand why he can't have normal energy regen. But it does make you think on how you cast spells. But he has so many spells, why do you really want to restrict the player in thinking what they should cast? You know what I mean? I think it adds an element of scarcity to his energy when you're giving him all these interesting abilities. None of them are super overpowered, though, so it's not like, if all of his abilities were very, very good, then add some scarcity. But they're not. They're all decent spells. So, let the player use them at their discretion, and then when he runs out of energy, well then, oh well. I like the idea of the Psi Condenser, and that he can get his energy back faster if you have a big army, though, so I definitely get that in the long term. But maybe you want to still add like a base regeneration just in case, because having to go back to those Dark Pylons is intriguing. Also, just to point out that at one point where you're supposed to blink across the bridge wasn't entirely clear. I think I did that part last, and I think it was meant to be done earlier. I guess I didn't fully understand why Kisrath couldn't just have blink from the get-go. I didn't know if he could use that to bypass a section or something earlier on, but I didn't see a reason why he couldn't just have that. And maybe it would have been kind of a failsafe in case you lost stalkers or something to get across the chasm. Also, the introduction of a Dark Templar caster. I think just too much. Like, maybe that's something you introduce in a mission 2. It's just that, you already have a new caster. I was barely used to his abilities. I wasn't even using half of them because I didn't remember them. And then I got another caster with 3 different abilities. And I understand, Revelation is probably meant to be pretty important. But you had other ways to deal with Dark Templar and other ways to get vision and things like that. So I think, again, maybe just, slow down with the rate with things that are introduced by either making the map longer, which I would not recommend, especially for a Mission 1, which, unless it's a lot of cinematics, should not be over an hour. But again, that's my personal opinion. I like slightly shorter maps. 10 minutes might be too short, but at the same time, I think, a comfortable 35 to 40 minutes is pretty reasonable for a micro map. Depending. But a Mission 1 might want to make it a little shorter, unless it's mostly narration. But overall, hugely impressive map. The boss fight was fun, albeit a bit unforgiving. I think Iquare's already made big changes to it, so I don't want to comment too much on it because I know he's already heard this over and over and over again. But I really like this map. Again, it was an impressive first creation by Iquare, and if anything, again, I think it almost tries to... It does too much. Every new and unique thing that's included is really fun and very cool by itself, but when you put it all together, it did feel a bit overwhelming. Intro not included. I think the intro is fine the way it is. I actually quite liked it. Moving into the Warcraft 3 submissions. This is exciting. This is going to be a long video. I hope you kind of enjoy this rambly talk because I like doing it. And again, I don't really have the time to do the technical video part of it. So anyway, moving on to the Warcraft 3 submissions. Gladiator sent by Outsider Z. It's an addendum to his Lord of the Clans campaign. Lord of the Clans is really fun. You should play it. The thing about Gladiator is it's very contextual, and I think I said this when I played it originally, in that I hope this doesn't come across as rude or in the wrong way, but I didn't feel that this entry was particularly competitive because, again, it's meant to be contextual to the rest of his campaign, which is absolutely incredible. You should play Outsider Z's Warcraft 3 campaigns. They're incredibly polished, and everything that he does has the player in mind. That's the best way I could describe it. It's all very user-friendly and fun, and forgiving, but not in a way that is patronizing, I guess is a good way to say it as well. So they're all very enjoyable to play. Some of my favorite stuff I've played in Warcraft 3 and Starcraft 2 because of Shadow of the Xel'Naga. But anyway, Gladiator was interesting. The arena fights were unique. I liked how you kind of had to figure out each one, but they weren't expansive. They were fairly contained, and they only took about a minute or a minute and a half each to complete. So, you know, each one was unique in its way. I think my favorite one was where you had to have the lizard walk over people. That was pretty neat. But again, mostly narrative focused and fits like a nice little piece into the Lord of the Clans campaign. So once he updates the whole campaign, I plan on playing it again because it's quite fun. Falling Boulders created by yet another YouTuber, and he's definitely worth checking out. Just search yet another YouTuber, all one word, no spaces, and he's got a Warcraft 3 focused channel. And the guy deserves more attention. He's a very good Warcraft 3 player who showcases a lot of Warcraft 3 stuff, as I do. But Falling Boulder was fun. I like the idea of an ogre-centric map. And basically, this map was rough around the edges, and this is very similar to one of the earlier submissions I had talked about, where he submitted it knowing this, and he said, you know, I just want to get some feedback on this. I think people will enjoy it, and I did. I liked it a lot. It was a bit directionless. I think you start it thinking it's going to be a fairly straightforward micro map, and then eventually it kind of occurred to me, oh, I think this is supposed to be like Founding of Durotar, but it wasn't really presented that way from the get-go, so that's why it sort of threw me through it for a loop. But I did really like the ogre units, and I think yet another YouTuber said that he plans on changing the hotkeys for the abilities, which is probably my only gripe with the usability of the ogres. But it's a really large map. There is an ability you are able to buy in more units. This is similar to some of the other entries as well, where they're very long, and if you don't perform well at certain points, you're not necessarily losing at that moment, but you're basically losing 30 minutes later because you didn't perform well enough at an earlier spot. So if you lose any of your ogre casters, you're probably going to lose later. And again, there's not... It's at the discretion of the creator on how forgiving they want their maps to be, because some maps they're always unforgiving, and people love those submissions, not submissions but maps, and I think this is one where again it's a little unforgiving because again if you lose your ogre casters early on, you probably think, oh, I'll be okay, the map doesn't look too big, and then 35 minutes later you realize, oh god, I needed a rejuvenation / bloodlust incredible buff ability, whatever that was. The healing and also bloodlust was really cool. I liked all the abilities. They were all really neat, and I felt like you had to use all of them if you wanted to succeed. So overall, again, really solid entry. It wasn't clear how to win. I guess it was winnable. You had to go back to the start of the map as opposed to going north through the trees. So it was just a little confusing. I think the text could be cleaned up a little bit. Just have it proofread, and it could get cleaned up, and it's really, really fun map. I would look forward to seeing more made. As far as I know, this was the first thing he's ever made in the Warcraft 3 editor, which is really impressive. It's very impressive, and it's really fun. It's a really, really solid map. So again, just a little cleanup, and you get a really, really good map. Prison Escape was very surprising to me. I had a lot of fun with Prison Escape. I think the emulation of Cuphead was apparent, specifically with the music. Some of the bosses, I think there were, 7 or 8 bosses? I liked all but maybe 1 or 2 of them where they felt a little too random, or maybe the arena was too small. But for the most part, I really liked them. Having to restart, I think I had to restart one of them 3 times, and I like that. I like where it's clear that you're supposed to learn and improve, which is kind of the foundation of Cuphead. Some of the bosses, it didn't really feel like you had to learn. It just felt like you had to restart it until you could execute a bit better. So in a way that, that kind of drew away from it. But for the most part, the bosses all landed quite well. I think my recommendation when I played it, and I stick to this, is there should be more trash mobs in there, because you need the ability to get more money so you can get better items. And if anything, the player's going to be restricted by inventory space. It's not like they're going to load up on a bunch of scrolls of restoration. I mean, they could, but, you don't need to add a boatload more trash mobs. You don't want the player swimming in money. But it got to the point where gold was so scarce that sometimes I didn't have enough money to buy a scroll just to get to half health before the next boss fight, and I had to sit and just wait for health regeneration. So just little things. The biggest thing is the quality of life, which is if you add a fountain before each boss, 1, it's making it clear to the player that they're approaching a boss, and 2, they don't have to stand around as long to wait for HP. And then they can use that very scarce gold on items that they can use during the boss fight. Again, maybe the intention was the gold was scarce, and if the player has to use it to heal it before the boss, so be it. But I think there were 1 or 2 bosses where if I didn't have consumables, definitely could not have won. So it's a little tricky. I think, just make it a tiny, tiny bit more player-friendly by adding the ability to get a little more gold. And then that way, if you add a lot more gold, then you don't have to worry about regeneration before the boss, because the player can buy that stuff. Alternatively, you add a little more gold, and then, some ability to have increased health and or mana regeneration before the bosses would make a little more sense. But overall, again, really, really fun map. It was long, but I was engaged the whole time. So this is a situation where it's a long map done really, really well, where I never felt like, oh, okay, this is dragging on a little too long. I was excited to go into the end, and I didn't even think I was done with it when I was. I was kind of hoping there was more, and I was already over an hour. So it was really fun. Really fun map. I liked it a lot. And then the StarCraft 1 submissions. Again, long video. Maybe you guys are still watching this. I don't know. I'm sure if you're the shambler of Ultimate Infestation, you're watching every minute of this video, or you've just skipped to the end. I don't know. But Mass Recall was sent by Stratos Tygo, also known as Skytech RTS, and this is part of a campaign he's working on. He's created like alternate timeline campaigns for StarCraft. And if you were to create a gameplay experience to showcase your campaign that's just right in the middle of the campaign, this felt like a great entry, because it was a mission 7, but even without context, without the narrative context of, oh, there's Tychus and uninfested Kerrigan, and why are they here? If you kind of suspend that disbelief, the gameplay of this map was very clean. I think the Defiler AI, maybe just cap the amount of Defilers the AI can have, because it got a little ridiculous with the Dark Swarm. Not that it was made it like things too hard or anything. It just kind of it's just absurd. You're getting like 6 Dark Swarms stacked on top of each other. So if you just cap the enemy in having a certain number of Defilers. But otherwise, again, very solid StarCraft 1 macro map that was fresh, but it was fresh but familiar. There was no MPQ modifications or anything like that. But it was just a very clean, crisp StarCraft 1 macro map that was enjoyable. It was challenging, but not too challenging. I did feel like maybe I couldn't win at the beginning. I think just the micro section to get to the base was a little convoluted, in that you could go a couple different ways, and they were just kind of gotcha. There's a lurker, there's an ultralisk, there's 20 unburrowed zerglings, that kind of stuff that can really get you before you get to the macro section, when things actually pick up even more. So yeah, overall it was good. I did feel that the main objective was, again, maybe this was my fault as a player. I just didn't feel it was presented properly, because when I would set up bases at the tribunals, then I would get attacked a significant amount. So I didn't take them till the very end, but there were nice bases to take in there, and I should have done that earlier. They would have been more defensible, things like that. So yeah, that's more of a player choice, but at the same time, I sort of thought it was that the tribunals would come under heavy attack if you started taking them. So I thought I'll take them all at the end. That turned out to be a mistake. Alrighty, Through the Mirror was interesting. Another one that was a little too vague, and I liked that at the beginning and less so at the end. I liked at the beginning where it was mysterious, we didn't understand what was going on, there wasn't really a timer, there weren't really objectives, but we were getting attacked and we had to wait for something. But that something never really came. I think what needs to happen, like the beginning of the map is great, and then halfway through it needs to become a little bit clear what's happening, and then the attack should ramp up, because there was some dead time in between having to find the reinforcements and then pick up the psi emitters, or whatever they were, whatever those emitters were supposed to be, transmitters, something like that. And I like that. So overall, I really like this map, but it just needed a little bit more clarification. And then the end, your allies just sort of poof, stop doing anything, which was a little strange. So I think ultimately the map should just be harder. That's it. It just needs... It needs to be harder in a certain way. Like, don't just make the enemy attacks larger. I think the enemy attacks, like, have them continue to attack your allies from certain directions. Because some of the attacks that came to your main base were fine. They were big, and it wasn't a problem. They don't need to be more challenging, but have the attacks come from different directions. Have your ally continuously come under attack as well. Because otherwise, what's the point of having that whole area defended if they're never going to break through down there? They attack there once and then never again. So again, you can add some challenge to that map and then clarify the objectives at some point. And then the very end as well, you've got like the all-out assault. And then, I don't know, your allies either go neutral or not and provide perhaps a narrative reason for that. I don't know. But overall, solid submission, just a little bit more polish, and it would be a really solid start to a campaign, or maybe it's just own scenario. It's fun. Mental Jim Raynor, fucking Mental Jim Raynor is by Butane Boss, was hilarious, and it was funny from start to finish. And when you think about it, it's just one enemy unit, and the briefing was very, very funny. And a funny briefing isn't what makes a good map. I just want to clarify, but it's certainly it was unique enough that it caught me off guard and was hilarious. What it does is it sets the tone for your map. So just because something is funny doesn't mean that it's always going to be the thing that Jayborino always picks, keep in mind. I'm just saying the briefing was funny and I liked it a lot. That's all I'm trying to point out. But at the same time, the gameplay it's like lightning in a bottle, kind of. It's just Jim Raynor and he's yelling at you. And because it's randomized where he goes, I think is what keeps it fresh the whole time. If I could suggest one thing, is that this is a Christian stream. Please don't have Jim Raynor swear so much. No, but for real, I think maybe adding a little civilian with a beacon off in the middle of the map, or like off on an island in the ocean where you have the ability to skip the timer. So if you feel prepared, especially later into the map, and you just want him to go, you just need Jim Raynor to go, you have the ability to have him go, and you don't have to wait for the whole timer if you don't want to wait. That's my only major suggestion. Otherwise, because I waited a long time, I played this map, I think, for like an hour and 10 minutes, and the majority, I would say, at least a third of that was me just waiting for him to attack again, and I cut those pieces of the video out. So that's my major criticism, but otherwise, it's like a very solid, what it feels like is it's like a 1999 or like a 2000 used map settings map from Battle.net. It's a very arcadey, and it's just like you join a lobby with people, and they're like, "Oh, we have to kill Jim Raynor," and that's like lurker defense or something. That's kind of what it felt like. So there's a nostalgia factor there, and it was very funny with the music and let me get you some lobster, right? So really, really fun. Squad 8, I liked Squad 8 a lot. It was some would say it was too simplistic, but what it did do. And I look at this like Alaric's Conquest, what I had set up for StarCraft 2. Solid Mission 1. It's what a Mission 1 should be. A Mission 1 should not be overly complex, and it should not be super long. I think it should be an introduction to your story, if it's meant to be a Mission 1. And it struck me like this should be a Mission 1, so it, you just have a hero. The hero was perhaps too powerful, but the idea of don't attack some of the buildings because the enemy sends reinforcements, I completely forgot about, and guess what? It completely fucked me over because I didn't think about that. I just attacked the empty bunkers. So that's what you get when I thought like, oh, it's only Marines. Let's get to the end of this submission and we'll talk about what we liked about it. But oh wait, I stopped paying attention and then I didn't follow the rules of the map. So Max734734, who submitted this map, kind of stabbed me in the back with that one. But I liked Squad 8, and again, same thing with the briefing. It was silly. It sets the tone for what you're going for. You know, do you want to make it silly? You know, like Cleanup Crew, Squad 8, fucking Mental Gym Raynor. You're setting that tone for what you're doing. Even Terran Heroics by Gastu. There was a lot of dialogue there. I'm rewinding back to Starcraft 2. A little too much dialogue on the map, but again, it was also setting the tone that it was supposed to be kind of over the top and absurdist. But Squad 8, same way, with Marine Guy and Commander Guy and that kind of stuff. Siege of Korhal, I think, deserves more attention for what it accomplished, and it was just a huge map. Like, imagine you just take 7 AIs and just have them go bananas, and that's what it was. But when I say go bananas, I mean each have them meticulously do scripted things. I think the amount of work that went into make all of those AIs function, and obviously the sprite limit was removed, the way that they did is very impressive, and it needs attention, but at the same time the map was just ridiculous. If anything, I didn't even want to play the map. I just wanted to be able to watch what all the AIs were doing so I could understand what Necron had included on this map. So ultimately I couldn't beat it, but you know, just go ahead and set the playable character to an AI too, and see if the UED can win. I think the Zerg in that map, they could afford to have better psi powers, because they don't really... I mean, I think, the Guardians had Ensnare or something. Like, imagine if you had Devourers that could cast Psionic Storm, or like a less powerful Psionic Storm, or Lockdown, or you know, stuff like that, goofy stuff. You know, if you're talking about your Zerg having cool psionic powers, you know, make them cool psionic powers. Make them powerful, because you're going up against AI that are entrenched and very hard to kill. So, honestly, the enemy AI doesn't have to necessarily be toned down if you could have access to super powerful abilities on your psionic Zerg. Alternatively, yeah, the AI, like, maybe just make the yellow base accessible by ground. Maybe. I think maybe I may have been able to make progress on the map and come close to completing it had I gone down the middle of the map as opposed to attacking yellow. I don't know. Anyway, I just want to point out that this map was really impressive for what it was doing, but the fact that it was just crazy hard and not balanced in any way, is kind of the downside there, but Necron even noted that in the README file, so he knows, and probably will continue to work on it. Ultimate Infestation was just too hard. The Shambler sent us this submission, and I think Pronago and Deltron were able to complete it, so make sure to check them out. But I wanna like the submission, but I didn't get far enough into it to realistically make comments on it, so I think I'll have to leave that to Deltron and Pronago, who were able to finish it. But just the attack waves, or maybe just the frequency needs reduced. Not necessarily both. A lot of the times I leave comments saying something seems too hard, or you know, so you should consider reducing the frequency and size of attacks. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do both of those things. You just, as the creator, you can decide how to tone it down and then test it and see. Because the way I play is different than how other people play, and you can consider me an average player, and if I can't beat it, tone it down, but you gotta figure out what's overboard. You can reduce the frequency of the attacks, but not the size, and it's still a hard map, but not, you know, not crazy hard. So, that's interesting. And then also the other objectives, I can't really even comment because I have no idea. That map, the layout of it was weird. The way that the minerals function, the Mutalisk attacks taking out your SCVs, the doodads that disallow you from building in specific locations. Again, I don't think all these things need changed, only 1 or 2 of them. And so you retain some of the initial spirit of the map, the original spirit of the map, while reducing the challenge of it and making it more doable. All right, we went through the whole list. I think it's time we wrap this up. I've been talking for a long time, and it's just been me staring at my desktop while I listen to the Unravel soundtrack. And I've really enjoyed this contest. Again, I just want to stress how much I appreciate all of the creators submitting. And I hope they know that they're appreciated and that we're not out to just bash the shit out of your maps. We want to share this stuff and bring awareness to it and get new people involved. So because this is technically a contest, we have to choose a winner. We just want to let everyone know that we really appreciate your time and your willingness to participate and your enthusiasm. It means a lot to us, and we hope that we can reflect that back to you. With that, thank you everybody. This is my MapCraft submission. my MapCraft. I gotta say, every time I've introed a video for MapCraft, it's been hard not to say MapCrap. I don't know why we named it that. It's just, I struggle to enunciate MapCraft every time. Anyway, again, I hope everyone enjoyed this. Leave your thoughts on the overall contest below. Also, your thoughts on the entries. Who do you think you should win? What do you think? What did you think of each of these? It's a broad thing to ask you to comment on, but really the contest. I want to hear what you thought. And with that, those are my retrospectives. We will be releasing a winner video probably within the next few weeks. We're hoping for the middle of December, but if holiday travel gets in the way, and it may, we'll move it out to the beginning of January. But we will see you all then. Thanks again for watching. Bye now.